I gave my greedy daughter exactly what she demanded at the final hearing. The clerk slid the papers toward me. My name was already typed at the bottom, neat and unquestioned. I picked up the pen, felt its weight settle into my fingers, and signed without hesitation. The story you are about to hear is a work of fiction created by the Her Chains channel team, based on real-life situations to convey lessons about family, emotions, and human values. All characters and events are illustrative. Across the table, Lydia Caldwell exhaled through a smile she didn't bother to hide. Relief, triumph, calculation, every emotion flickered across her face at once. She leaned back in her chair like someone who had already won. "Thank you, Mother," she said softly. "This is the right decision." I didn't answer. My attorney, Arthur Bell, stared at the page I had just signed, his mouth opening as if he might speak. He didn't. He had already begged me to fight this. He had begged me not to do exactly what I had just done. I had listened. Then I had done it anyway. Lydia's lawyer, Ronan Pierce, cleared his throat and began reading the settlement aloud, his voice precise and confident. The beneficiary accepts full ownership of the estate, including all real property, business interests, and associated. He stopped. The word hung in the air, unfinished. Ronan looked down at the page again, then up, as if checking whether someone had changed the text while he wasn't looking. His lips parted slightly. His jaw tightened. "Continue," Lydia said, irritation creeping into her voice. Ronan didn't respond. His eyes moved back to the document, slower this time. He read the next line silently. The room went quiet, not the polite quiet of a courtroom, but the kind that presses in on your ears. I could hear Lydia's breath now, sharp and impatient. "Ronan," she said. "What is it?" He lowered the paper just enough to look at me. For the first time that morning, his confidence slipped. I met his gaze and felt something steady bloom in my chest. Not joy, not revenge. Certainty. Ethan's plan had worked. When the judge called the session to order again, Ronan finally spoke, but not to Lydia. He asked for a brief recess. I folded my hands in my lap and waited, already knowing what would come next. Ethan's funeral ended before my daughter's sympathy did. She stood beside me through the service, her hand resting lightly on my arm, her voice soft whenever someone approached. "She's holding up," Lydia told them, stronger than I expected. Each word sounded practiced, as if she had rehearsed them on the drive over. 3 days later, she came to the house. "I think we should talk," she said, standing in the doorway with her purse still on her shoulder. "Not later, now." I hadn't taken off my black dress yet. I noticed she had. We sat at the dining table Ethan had insisted we keep when we moved here years ago, the one he said made him feel anchored. Lydia didn't look at it. She opened a folder instead. "This isn't about money," she said quickly. "It's about responsibility." I waited. Dad built something real. She continued. The company, the properties, the contracts at the port. It needs someone active, someone who understands how these things work now. "I helped your father run that business for over 30 years, I said. My voice surprised me with how steady it sounded. Lydia smiled in a way that didn't reach her eyes. "You helped. That's different." She slid a page toward me. "I've spoken to people, accountants, advisors. There's concern about delays, concern from whom I asked." She hesitated for half a second. "From everyone." I closed the folder without reading it. Lydia's jaw tightened. "Mom," she said, lowering her voice, "this isn't personal. You don't need to manage estates or businesses at your age. You deserve peace. Peace." She said it like a favor. "Ethan trusted me." I said, "He trusted me too." She replied, sharper now, and he knew I'd step in if something happened. Something about her certainty unsettled me. Not grief, not fear, preparation. That night, after she left, Arthur Bell called. "She's moving fast," he said. "Faster than most." I looked around the quiet house, at the papers already stacked on the sideboard, the meetings Lydia had scheduled without asking. "Yes," I said. "She is." And I understood then that my daughter had not come to mourn her father. She had come to collect him. Lydia returned 2 days later, this time with Ronan Pierce. She introduced him as if she were proud of the name. "Ronan is helping me make sure everything is handled correctly," she said, efficiently. Ronan shook my hand once and didn't sit until Lydia did. He placed a leather folder on the table and opened it without asking. "We'll keep this straightforward," he said. "We've prepared an inventory of the estate." Inventory. The word landed wrong. Lydia leaned forward. The primary residence. The warehouse property near the port. The company shares. And the long-term contracts Ethan held. "It's all listed." She slid the pages toward me. Columns. Headings. Values. My marriage reduced to bullet points. "I'm still alive." I said. "Yes," Lydia replied, too quickly. "Of course you are. But these things need active oversight, the business especially. It can't afford delays. I managed the books while your father was sick." I said. "I negotiated with his partners. I signed checks." Ronan glanced at Lydia before speaking. "With respect, Mrs. Caldwell, assistance is not the same as control." The word was deliberate. Lydia folded her hands. "This isn't meant to be insulting. It's just practical. You don't want this responsibility now." Arthur Bell cleared his throat beside me. "There's no legal requirement for an immediate transfer." Lydia's smile tightened. "We're not talking about legality. We're talking about what's best." For whom Arthur asked, Ronan answered instead. "For the estate." I felt heat crawl up my neck. "You keep saying that word like it's separate from me." Lydia stood. "Mom, please don't make this harder than it has to be. We can do this cleanly and quickly. Quickly!" Arthur repeated. His voice was calm, but his hand brushed my sleeve. A quiet warning. Speed benefits one side more than the other. Lydia looked at him. Annoyance flashing. "We're trying to be respectful. Respect would sound different." Arthur said. Silence followed. Lydia gathered the papers, stacked them neatly, and placed them back in Ronan's folder. "Think about it," she said. "But don't take too long." As they left, Arthur leaned close. "This isn't organization," he said. "It's a takeover." I watched the door close behind my daughter and felt something settle heavy in my chest. My life had already been priced. Lydia called the next morning. "I've been thinking about you," she said, "about what you need right now." I didn't answer. I waited. "We don't want you to feel rushed." She continued. "So I spoke with Ronan. We can give you 30 days to stay in the house while you make arrangements. 30 days. She said it gently, like an offering. "This is still my home," I said. "For now," Lydia replied, "but we need to be realistic." Arthur Bell joined the call without announcing himself. Realistic would include discussing ownership before deadlines. Lydia sighed. "Arthur, please. This isn't about forcing anyone out. It's about transitions." "And the hospital bills?" Arthur asked. There was a pause. "Too long?" "Yes," Lydia said. "That's another thing we should address." She explained it like she was reading instructions. The insurance had covered most of Ethan's care, but not all of it. Outstanding balances. Specialists. Extended treatment. According to the paperwork Ronan had reviewed, those costs fell to me. "You were his spouse," Lydia said. "You made decisions together. That's how it works." Arthur's voice sharpened. "Those debts typically move through the estate." "Not in this case," Lydia said quickly. "The estate assets are tied up. Probate delays. Creditors won't wait. How much, I asked. $180,000, she said, as if it were a minor inconvenience. I gripped the edge of the table. Lydia kept talking. You'll still receive the life insurance. $200,000. That should cover it, with some left over. Some $20,000 to rebuild a life. This isn't personal, she added. It's just unavoidable. Arthur broke in. This is pressure, Lydia, deadlines, debt, housing. All at once. I'm trying to help, she said. Dad wouldn't want Mom stressed. Arthur muted the call and leaned toward me. She's cornering you. Time, money, shelter. She wants you tired. When the call ended, my phone buzzed again. A message from Lydia. We should finalize things quickly so you don't have to worry. I stared at the screen and felt the panic settle in. Not loud, not frantic, but heavy and deliberate. Lydia wasn't offering mercy, she was setting a clock. Arthur closed the door behind him and set his briefcase down without sitting. You can fight this, he said. And you should. He laid the options out carefully. Contest the will. Slow probate. Demand full accounting. Force disclosures. He spoke in timelines measured in months, sometimes years, and in costs that climbed as he talked. Legal fees, expert reviews, depositions. He didn't hide the emotional toll either. They're counting on you being tired, he said. Grief makes people careless. We don't have to be. I listened without interrupting. When he finished, I folded my hands. I won't do it. I said, Arthur blinked. Maris, I understand everything you said. I continued. I don't want a war. This isn't a war, he said. It's protection. Protection that would drain what little I have left. I replied. I'd spend months fighting my own daughter while creditors circle. Arthur paced once. You'd likely win, eventually, I said. And what would I look like by then? He stopped in front of me. You'd look like someone who stood up for herself. I met his eyes. I'd look like someone who survived another battle. I'm done surviving. Arthur's shoulders dropped. So you're giving her what she wants. I'm ending this quickly, I said. Cleanly. That's surrender. No, I said. It's a choice. Arthur rubbed his face. Frustration leaking through his professionalism. Once you sign, there's no reversing it. I know. He studied me for a long moment. Then I need you to be sure. I am. When he left, Lydia called within the hour. I heard you spoke with Arthur, she said, her tone suddenly warm. I'm glad you're being reasonable. Reasonable? Another word that stung. We can move the hearing up, she continued. No need to drag this out. You seem relieved, I said. She laughed softly. I just want you taken care of. Taken care of. As if I were a problem to be managed. After the call ended, I sat alone and let the quiet return. Arthur believed I had surrendered. Lydia believed she had won. Neither of them knew why I had chosen speed. But I did. Ethan's study was the only room Lydia hadn't claimed yet. I went there after midnight. Not because I was searching, but because it was the last place in the house that still felt like him. The desk drawers were mostly empty, cleared out during his illness. Old receipts, pens that no longer worked. I slid open the bottom drawer and felt something resist. Underneath, taped flat against the wood, was a small brass key. I peeled the tape away carefully, my fingers suddenly unsteady. The key was worn smooth, older than the locks in the house. It didn't belong to any door I recognized. Beneath it was a folded scrap of paper, Ethan's handwriting unmistakable. Let her take what she asks for. That was all. No explanation, no comfort, just instruction. I sat there holding the key, the words pressing into me harder than anything Lydia had said. He had written it knowing what would come, knowing what she would do, knowing what I would be asked to give up. My phone rang. Lydia's name lit the screen. Mom, she said quickly when I answered. I was just checking in. Her voice sounded wrong, too alert, about what I asked. She hesitated. Just how you're holding up. I know you've been going through things. I said nothing. Have you been in Dad's office? She asked. The question came too fast. I've been in my house, I replied. Another pause. Shorter this time. Sharper. Did you find anything? She asked. The key felt heavier in my palm. No, I said. Her breath released audibly. Good. I mean, there's nothing important there, just old paperwork. We don't want anything confusing things before the hearing. Of course, I said. We'll talk tomorrow, Lydia added, already retreating. Try to get some rest. The line went dead. I stayed where I was, the note still open on the desk, the key resting beside it. For the first time since Ethan died, something inside me lifted. He hadn't left me unprotected. He had left me a way forward. The teller didn't ask why I was there. She checked my identification, glanced at the key, and nodded once. Follow me, Mrs. Caldwell. The vault room was quiet in a way that felt deliberate. She unlocked a narrow box, placed it on the table, and left me alone. Inside were folders stacked with care. Not loose papers, not panic. Structure. The first letter was in Ethan's handwriting, dated months before his diagnosis worsened, Maris. It began. If you are reading this, Lydia has already moved faster than grief allows. I read slowly, my breath steadying with each line. Ethan explained how Lydia had begun asking questions early, too early. Requests for documents, casual mentions of succession. He had noticed the shift long before I had. Beneath the letter were records, copies of correspondence, meeting notes, a timeline that showed exactly when Lydia started preparing for ownership. Ethan hadn't accused her. He had observed her. The next folder held instructions. Clear, precise, written for me. Do not argue, do not delay. Let her choose speed. At the bottom of the stack sat a single page, clipped apart from the rest. A sentence was highlighted in blue ink, across the top. Ethan had written 2 words. Read last. I didn't read it yet. I picked up my phone and saw 3 missed calls from Lydia. 1 message. Ronan wants to move the hearing earlier. The sooner we finish this, the better for everyone, better for her. I finally read the highlighted sentence. Once. Then again. It wasn't dramatic. It didn't threaten. It didn't accuse. It simply transferred responsibility. Ownership came with obligations. Acceptance triggered conditions. Any attempt to challenge what was accepted erased the right to keep it. It was quiet, final, exact. I understood then why Lydia had been rushing, why she wanted signatures before questions, why she kept asking what I had found. Ethan had not tried to change our daughter. He had planned for who she already was. I closed the box, slid the key into my purse, and thanked the teller when she returned. On the walk back to my car, my phone rang again. Lydia's name flashed insistently. I let it ring. For the first time since Ethan died, the ground beneath me felt solid. I read Ethan's letter twice before I let myself breathe. He wrote the way he always had, plain, careful, unwilling to dramatize even the things that mattered most. I didn't confront Lydia. He began. Because confrontation would have made her defensive, not honest. I needed her to show me who she was when she thought no one was watching. I could hear his voice in the lines. Calm, patient, disappointed, but not surprised. He explained how he had noticed the shift months earlier. The questions about timelines, the sudden interest in contracts, the way she spoke about what happens next while he was still alive. He had tested nothing, accused nothing. He had simply watched. I wanted proof. He wrote, not to punish her, but to protect you. The next page explained the clause. No legal language for my sake. Just intent. If Lydia takes the estate, she must take it whole. He wrote, assets and obligations together, and she must do so freely. No coercion, no confusion. Her consent is what activates everything. I closed my eyes. He had never wanted to force her hand. This only works if you choose it. He continued, if you fight Maggie, the trap never closes. If you warn her, she steps around it. Speed is the key. Let her rush. There it was. The reason he had told me to surrender. This is not revenge, Ethan wrote. Revenge is loud and leaves scars. This is consequence. She will live inside the decisions she makes. I pressed my hand to my mouth. The grief came then. Sharp and sudden. Not for what he had planned, but for how well he had known us both. At the bottom of the final page, his handwriting softened. If you cannot do this, walk away. I will understand. This is your choice. Maris, not mine. I folded the letter and held it against my chest. I could have stopped everything. I could have fought. I could have warned Lydia and burned the plan to the ground. Instead, I picked up my phone and sent Arthur Bell a single message. Proceed as scheduled. I wasn't choosing punishment. I was choosing truth. Delivered cleanly. With no need for shouting. And for the first time since Ethan died, I felt aligned with him again. We were back in the same room, the same long table, the same neat stacks of paper. The symmetry wasn't lost on me. Lydia sat across from me, tapping one manicured nail against her phone. She looked bored, impatient, already past this moment. Ronan Pierce stood beside her, skimming the settlement with the confidence of someone who believed the outcome was settled. Arthur Bell caught my eye and gave a small nod. He said nothing. Let's proceed, the clerk said. Lydia leaned forward. I have a meeting in an hour. Ronan began reading aloud, his voice smooth and practiced. The beneficiary accepts full ownership of the estate, including all real property, business interests, contractual rights, and associated obligations. He slowed. I watched his brow crease, just slightly. As he reached the highlighted line, he read it again. Silently this time. Continue, Lydia said sharply. Ronan swallowed. By accepting said assets. He read aloud now carefully. The beneficiary expressly assumes all liens, debts, contractual liabilities, and encumbrances attached thereto, whether known or undisclosed at the time of execution. Lydia frowned. That's standard. Ronan didn't answer. He turned the page. The beneficiary further acknowledges, he continued, that acceptance constitutes informed consent, and any challenge, appeal, or attempt to renegotiate these terms shall result in immediate forfeiture of all claims to the estate. Silence fell. Ronan stopped reading. Lydia laughed once, short and dismissive. You can stop dramatizing. It's fine. Ronan lowered the paper slowly. Lydia, he said, his voice tight, you accepted responsibility for what she snapped. For everything, he said. Every obligation, every condition, and you waived the right to undo it. Her smile faltered. That's not what this means. Ronan looked at me then, understanding dawning too late. It's exactly what it means. Lydia turned to me. Mom? I didn't respond. Ronan leaned closer to her, his voice dropping. The estate isn't clean. The business contracts, the deferred liabilities. You agreed to take them all, and you cannot contest this without losing everything. Her chair scraped loudly as she stood. This is a mistake, Arthur spoke for the first time. It's executed. Lydia's eyes searched my face. Panic breaking through the anger. You knew. Yes, I said quietly. The judge called the hearing to order again, but the room had already shifted. Lydia sat down slowly, the victory she'd arrived with slipping through her fingers. I folded my hands in my lap and felt nothing but calm. The sentence had done its work. The room didn't explode. It didn't need to. Lydia stood so abruptly, her chair tipped back. "Mom, wait," she said, her voice cracking as the meaning finally caught up to her. "This isn't what we agreed to." Arthur gathered his papers without looking at her. "This is exactly what was agreed to." Ronan Pierce said nothing. He stared at the document like it had betrayed him personally. "Say something." Lydia pressed, turning to me. "You can fix this." I rose slowly. "There's nothing to fix." Her mouth opened, then closed. For the first time in weeks, she had no prepared line, no framing, no urgency left to weaponize. "The contracts transfer today," Ronan said quietly. "So do the obligations. That can't be right." Lydia said, "It is," Arthur replied, "and it's final." The judge closed the file. The sound was small, but it carried. Lydia followed me into the hallway. "You didn't have to do this," she said, louder now, hoping for witnesses. "I'm your daughter." I stopped walking. "And I was your mother when you decided to take everything." She reached for my arm. I stepped back. "I'm not rescuing you from choices you made willingly," I said. "Not anymore." Arthur walked beside me as we exited the building. "You handled that cleanly," he said. "So did Ethan," I replied. Outside, Lydia's voice rose again, sharp with panic, but it no longer pulled at me. The consequences were already moving through systems larger than either of us. Paperwork, contracts, clauses she had rushed past. As I walked to my car, I felt lighter than I had in months. Not because I had one, but because I had not compromised myself to stop someone else from losing. There's a lesson people don't talk about enough. Love does not mean surrendering your future. Family does not excuse exploitation. And boundaries, when written clearly and enforced calmly, can be kinder than endless forgiveness. If this story resonated with you, tap like, subscribe, and leave a comment about where you're watching from. Stories like this matter because they remind us we are allowed to protect ourselves. I drove away from Savannah knowing I had kept my dignity intact, and that was worth more than anything my daughter had demanded.